I just ran into a problem. Today, I am trying to turn this thrifted midi-ish skirt into a tiered ruffle mini skirt. I'm having some doubts, to be honest, because it's really small and I don't know if it's going to be enough fabric, but we won't know until we actually try, will we?
Another way that I knew this skirt was too small is because its waistband doesn't fit around my neck.
But worst comes to worst, if it doesn't fit, if it's too small for me, then I'll just put it up in my shop for sale. So either way, it's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
Oh, my eyes are so dry. My game plan is to cut the waistband off because I don't think I'm going to use it. Open up the darts and then cut right above where the fabric is gathered. And I'm just going to try to cut as close as possible to the top, to the seam, so that I'm not compromising too much fabric. Once I do that, the fabric will be open. And then from there, I can cut out my pattern pieces. So let's go. Let's do it. I was able to deconstruct the original skirt. This was like the top tier underneath the waistband, and then this was the piece that was underneath the top tier. I'm really happy because it looks like a lot of fabric, and I feel like I am going to be able to make my mini skirt, but we won't really actually know until we know. One issue that I did run into was when I was taking out the darts, I did notice that like there are some holes like where the stitches for the darts are. And I don't know if it's because this garment is like quite old or if the needle that they used was too big. I'm not sure, but I'm just hoping that it's not going to become any bigger. And I hope that I'll be able to hide it once I like fold it over, because I'm going to use this top tier as like the waistband. I'm just going to iron these pieces so that I can really like expand the fabric and really see how much real estate I'm working with, because it being wrinkled, it's like it's still kind of gathered in a way. So this is the top tier. I think I could have ironed this a little bit more, but it's okay. And then this is the bottom tier, which looks amazing. One thing that I'm concerned about is the see-throughness of it. Is there a word for that? The opacity. Boom. I can see that it is see-through, but I'm hoping that because I'm going to gather it, it's going to kind of help to prevent that. I was also able to pull out my mat and I was able to set up the projector for the sewing patterns. I'm a little nervous because my Wi-Fi has been acting a fool. And I don't think I need my Wi-Fi in order to like connect the projector to my computer, but we'll see. Come on, it says connected. The embarrassment, it says connected. So the issue that I'm having is that my pattern pieces are not on a right angle. These are the pattern pieces that I drafted in Inkscape, but I'll go into the details and the dimensions of this pattern later in the video, so keep watching. You see the yellow line from the mat goes right underneath the black line of the pattern piece on the vertical angle, the vertical axis. And then for the horizontal axis, the yellow line for the mat also goes right underneath the black line for the pattern piece. So it means that it's on a perfect right angle. Great. The vertical line of the mat is under the vertical line of the pattern piece. But then look at the horizontal line. You can see the yellow line from the mat is like way below the black line of the pattern piece. It means that it's not on a right angle. And even if you look at the bottom, you can see that the bottom is like going up from that grid line on the mat. I'm back. It is the next day. So I spent the night working on updating the pattern pieces. I ended up just making some paper patterns. So this is the tier 1 and this is the tier 2. And I didn't do anything with the waistband because I felt pretty confident about it enough to not like update it. And then I also traced the pattern pieces onto the fabric. Now the next thing I'm going to do is actually just cut out the pieces and then start putting them together. So let's do it. Let's do it. I was able to cut out all of the pattern pieces. Woohoo! Now what I'm going to start working on is each of the different tiers and just kind of assembling them before I put all of the pieces together. So the first tier that I'm going to work on is the waistband tier. And these are the two pieces for the waistband. So I'm just going to sew them together so that it's one long rectangle instead of two pieces. I was able to sew all of the tiers together so that instead of having two pieces for each tier, I now have one long piece for each tier. Wow, I just said tier a whole lot of times. But I just ran into a problem.
We have a problem. We have a big problem.
I tried by starting to connect the waistband and the first tier together. But when I did that, I realized that it's not even. I'm coming up short. So if you see here, there's extra fabric from the first tier, and the waistband is like, it stops shorter than the first tier. And then when you look on the other side, it's the same way. So I need to go back to the drawing board and figure out what I did wrong. It turns out that I had not one, but two issues. One of those issues, minor and fixable. The other issue, catastrophic.
Catastrophic!
Okay, I'm being dramatic. But for real though, the major issue was that because I didn't have Wi-Fi, I was not able to use the pattern projector app, which means that I wasn't able to calibrate the grid and to just make sure that the scaling and everything was accurate. So it's very possible that this skirt is going to be too small. And then the minor issue was that I should have gathered that first tier before trying to attach it to the waistband. So all I got to do is just unpin the tiers, and then I need to gather the first and the second tier.
I slapped on my gathering foot and I went to town on both the first and the second tiers. And before you ask, yes, I do have a whole video on 5 different ways to gather fabric even if you don't have a gathering foot. I gathered the top of my first tier to the width of the waistband, and then I gathered the top of my second tier to the width of the bottom of the first tier. Then I stacked tier 2 on top of tier 1 so that the right side of both tiers were facing up. After that, I sewed along a 1/4 inch seam allowance and it looked like one complete panel like this. I sandwiched both the waistband piece and the panel together with right sides facing, and I sewed along the 1/4 inch seam allowance. I folded over the seam allowance along the other edge of the waistband, and then I folded the waistband in half. And then I top stitched the folded edge down in place to create a casing for the elastic to go through. I took some elastic and I wrapped it around my waist and I kept it taut, not stretched to the max, but also not super loose, like middle ground. Then I cut the elastic, leaving about 1 inch extra for seam allowance. And I fed the elastic through the waistband with my loop turner. And then I pinned the ends of the elastic down inside of the casing. From there, I stacked the side edges of the skirt with right sides facing, and I closed up the skirt by stitching along the seam allowance. I could not give up on the skirt, so I went back to the drawing board and revised my sewing pattern. My original pattern didn't account for the fact that I would be folding the waistband in half to make the casing, so I fixed that. And I also changed the shape of the pattern pieces into rectangles because I think my original shape is the reason why I ended up with pointy sides. And this is what my new pattern pieces looked like when I was done making the revisions. Using an old bed sheet, I cut out the new pattern pieces and I sewed them together following the same steps that I did with the first skirt. And this is how it turned out. I added this cute tie string inside of the waistband. I have more of these skirts on my website, so check them out if you're interested. And if you're looking for some upcycle ideas, you can check out this playlist for inspo. Until next time, ciao!